What's up guys? Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to cover the Destruction Warlock for patch 9.0.5. I know 9.1 is around the corner, and in the talent section of this video, I will discuss the upcoming changes to Destruction within 9.1, but for this video, it's going to focus mostly on patch 9.0.5 because that is the current patch in WoW, and going into 9.1, the changes that are happening do not revolve around the core rotation of Destruction. There is a couple of talents that may fiddle with it a little bit, but the core rotation itself for Destruction does not move. Now, this video is going to be quite a long one, so there will be timestamps in the description below as to the portion of the guide that you wish to go to. That way, you know, if you're only here for, say, the rotation portion, go ahead and just go to that. That way, you know, if the guide ended up being an hour long, you don't have to sit through the entire thing. And apologies in advance. Another thing, I am starting to stream, so that will be linked in the description below, but it is twitch.tv/gridlockguides. So catch me over there when I'm live. Right now there is no current stream schedule because my life's in a little bit of a roller coaster at the moment, but I just figured I would throw that out there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. So, what are we going to cover in today's video guide? Well, I'm going to cover our talents first, the stat priorities, both rotation of single target and multi-target. Now, stat priorities are really different off of raid bots, but I'll kind of cover that when we get into the stat priority portion of the guide. Covenant abilities. So this video is going to cover Necrolord and Night Fae. Another reason it is going to be a little longer than most guides you see. I'm going to cover the benefits of both and sometimes some of the downsides as to each covenant. Covenant choice, Necrolord and Night Fae once again. So kind of the Soulbinds and stuff that go with it as to why. Soulbinds are also in this guide. Conduits. So Destruction, I'm going to cover every single conduit Destruction can get. That includes all basic Warlock stuff as well, but I'll also cover what I feel is the strongest conduits going into 9.1, just so that way you can go after those first. Legendary choices. There are some speculations that we'll be changing legendaries, so if you want to just go directly to that, more power to you. I will tell you, if you're contemplating crafting your legendary now, I would personally wait till 9.1 hits to craft that legendary. All of these soul ash increases, and they're adding a new currency called Soul Cinders. So that's going to be looked at getting your higher legendary, which is why I recommend waiting until the patch releases to craft it, just in case. The rotation portion, so I'm going to cover single target and multi-target in the video. For the rotation piece, cover what I say, not as I do. I'm still not 100% mechanically there, but the portion of it that is said is correct. And last but not least, I'm going to leave you with some tips and tricks to get better as Destruction. Destruction is one of those classes that, or specs really, that you can pick up, but it is very difficult to fully master the spec, kind of like any spec and rotation in WoW. They are kind of easy to pick up and easy to get, but most of them to play at a high level are kind of hard to master. So, for the single target talents, we are looking at the talent build currently here. Flashover is the cookie cutter go-to right now. It's because Conflagrate deals 25% increased damage. It grants additional charge of Backdraft. And for those of you that don't know what Backdraft is, it reduces the cast time on spells casted by Incinerate or Chaos Bolt. You're going to want to use the Backdraft charges on Chaos Bolt when possible, but as you gain more haste, it does not matter. The other two talents in this row really aren't taken currently. Soulfire sims better right now. Generates a shard, applies Immolate, not really taken. Eradication, Chaos Bolt increases the damage of all spells done to the target by 10% for 7 seconds. In 9.1, Eradication does increase pet damage, so we may see a swap to this, just because of that pet damage increase, and that will change the rotation out to try and kind of lengthen the time spent between Chaos Bolts. More covered in the rotation piece later in the video. Level 25, Cookie Cutter, Reverse Entropy, always right now. That's because spells have a chance to generate 15% additional haste for 8 seconds. You get this in a burst window. It is massive. Otherwise, 15% haste is nothing to laugh at right now. It's really, really nice to have. Internal Combustion has seen play on Sludge Fist, not really anywhere else. Internal Combustion without a lot of haste can be kind of difficult to keep up fully. Basically, when Chaos Bolt hits the target, if Immolate is on it, it consumes 5 seconds of the buff, dealing that damage instantaneously. So you want to make sure you cast that with a minimum of 5 seconds available on Immolate. Shadowburn. Its current iteration in 9.1 has been changed. So in 9.1, the massive change to this talent is it's being buffed by about 23%. And if the target dies with Shadowburn applied to the target, it refunds that soul shard. So you can see play with the Wilfred Legendary, which I'm going to cover later. Because of that soul shard refundage, if you want to say that, you can basically just roll soul shards. And the crit gain from this might make it look like a nice talent on a couple of bosses coming in 9.1. Level 30, we're looking at Demon Skin, Burning Rush, or Dark Pact. This is a personal row. If you are Necrolord, I would go Burning Rush for the mobility. Otherwise, I'd just stay with Demon Skin. Dark Pact is mostly seen in PvP or instances where you might die and you need that additional health. Level 35 row, Cataclysm, Cookie Cutter build, always. The reason we take Cataclysm as destruction is the damage applier isn't really the main reason, but it is a nice bonus. It's more the Immolate affected to all targets in the area. This is massive for soul shard generation, also massive for just, like I said before, the damage of it, increased generation of soul shards, you get the drift. You'll be able to cast more spells with it as well. Fire and Brimstone saw play in beta. It is not currently usable. They did buff it a little bit in 9.0.5, but in 9.1, I don't think we're going to see any play with this. And for Necrolord, it also has a reduced thing for Incinerate. So right now, if I were to choose Necrolord, choose Fire and Brimstone, it's going to reduce the overall Decimating Bolt damage down to 40 from a base of 100. So that's why you don't see Fire and Brimstone played ever. Same thing applies for Night Fae here. This just really has no power over Cataclysm. Inferno. This does see some play with the multi-target build if your tank can stand still. If not, Cataclysm is the play. But if your tank does stand still, Rain of Fire damage is increased by 20%, and every tick of Rain of Fire has a 20% chance to generate a fragment. So you're generating soul shards off a soul shard spender if your tank can stand still. That's why this talent is sometimes picked. Level 40, another personal row. I personally recommend Mortal Coil, because of the health benefit gain from the cast. Mostly on bosses, you just have that's a free health stone. And people overlook that all the time. This is why Mortal Coil is mostly taken. Dark Fury can see play in keys. The reason is Shadow Fury reduction, but I still recommend Mortal Coil. Howl of Terror is seen in PvP when you need a extra CC. Level 45 row, we're looking at Roaring Blaze, Reign of Chaos, and Grimoire of Sacrifice. Roaring Blaze is seen in the single target build. So all the abilities listed, so Channel Demon Fire when talented, Immolate, Incinerate, Conflag, and Soulfire when talented, all have damage increased by 25% for 8 seconds. With increased haste values, you can see a uptime of 100% during casted spells. That's why this is taken in most single target scenarios. For the multi-target or single target side of things, you're not going to really see Reign of Chaos or Grimoire of Sacrifice. Reign of Chaos does have a higher damage ceiling, but it's RNG kind of slot machine effect. That's the reason why it doesn't see play. If maybe the first or second cast of like Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire would trigger another Infernal, I could see this being played, but because it's so RNG based, you don't really see that. Now, in the multi-target scenario, you are still going to see a Reign of Chaos build. That's just because of the amount of damage the Infernals bring is not something to laugh at. But you can also see Roaring Blaze with the next talents. Level 50, we're looking at Soul Conduit, Channel Demon Fire, or Dark Soul Instability. All three of these really see play. And the reason behind this is if you run Reign of Chaos for multi-target, you can run Dark Soul or Soul Conduit. If you run Roaring Blaze, you can run Channel Demon Fire or Dark Soul. And the reason behind that is Soul Conduit's Soul Shard. Every time you spend Soul Shards, each shard has a 15% chance to be refunded. So that's a really nice play to see with a build that looks something like this. You can basically totally do the slot machine build with this. You can also see play with this with Inferno, which is what I was saying a minute ago. That's why Reign of Chaos is sought after. The last really multi-target based build for Destruction can look something like this. This has play with a legendary that I'm going to say later in the guide, which Channel Demon Fire is massively used with this build because of the way it interacts with Roaring Blaze. That's been the single target and multi-target talents. Up next, we're going to look at stat priorities. So, stat priorities in this guide for single target, you're going to be Intellect over Haste, over Mastery, over Crit, over Versatility. The reason behind this is because Intellect, as Destruction Warlock goes, all secondary stats are very, very close to each other. So you want to just crave high level for Destruction. Haste is a very quality of life boost, which I'll cover here in a minute, but that's why Intellect is first. Destruction really sees all stats viable. Multi-target, we're seeing Intellect, Haste, Crit, Mastery, and Verse. And the reason you see Crit higher than Mastery here is because Crit has a fun play with Destruction. Every time Immolate crits or Incinerate crits, you gain more Soul Shard fragments. So you're gaining shards faster, you're able to spend them faster, and this is where the quality of life comes into play for Destruction. The reason Haste is the #1 stat, outside of obviously using raid bots, which I recommend you do regardless of any stat priorities given at any point in time, is because you want to use raid bots. Raid bots is a tool built for WoW, where you throw in, say, 50 pieces of gear, and it gives you 14 of the best pieces to use. So that's why stat priorities are always looked at, but you always want to just refer to whatever your top gear is. Moving on, we're looking at Covenant choice abilities. So this is going to cover the two main abilities for the Necrolord and Night Fae. The first main ability is Destruction, or Necrolord has, is Decimating Bolt. So when you cast Decimating Bolt, it does a little bit of damage based on the health of the target, and the next 3 Incinerates are buffed by up to 100%. Now, it says 100% in the tooltip. It actually is about 200%. It's 100% baseline. So 100% buffed at 100% health, 200% buffed at 0% health. Obviously, it's an execute. This can be used with Havoc, so the buffed Incinerates are extremely good inside a Havoc window if you can't cast Chaos Bolt and you're using Rain of Fire. Obviously, the shard-generated Incinerates are going to do a lot more damage. Really good with 1 to 2 target burst with that Havoc. An Incinerate, you can cast the 3 Incinerates over the next 45 seconds. The buff does not disappear until Decimating Bolt comes back off cooldown, but I've really seen the Incinerates casted within the first, say, 15 to 20 seconds, honestly. Night Fae side, you're looking at Soul Rot. Does a lot of damage to its main target and up to 3 additional targets, and has the utility of Drain Life, so if you need that excessive heal, it does have the ability to do so. Applies a stat amp when casted on Nia and Dreamweaver, which I'll get into here in a minute. Karain requires a single target to fire off its additional Night Fae ability, which I'll cover here in a little bit as well, but that crit is something to also look at. So the reason somebody would pick Necrolord, it has 1 PvP good Soulbind, it has 2 PvE good Soulbinds, it's got inside the PvE Soulbind 1 burst playstyle with Emony, and its main ability is Fleshcraft, a 40% max health shield with up to a 20% channeling damage reduction. Extremely useful if you need to soak a mechanic. You can cast Fleshcraft in the middle of said mechanic, take 20% health, or take 20% reduced damage from it, or you cast it before the ability happens and you automatically have 40% more health. So you can look at it both ways. Moving near mobs with Bonesmith Harmir, one of the Covenant's Soulbinds, is something to look at. And last but not least, Burning Rush does not consume the shield, which is really good. You can move over, be healed, and still have that shield to soak the mechanic. For the Night Fae side of things, you're looking at 3 completely separate burst playstyles. Obviously, they're all beneficial in PvP, so that's why all of them are looked at, but they're all burst. 1 crit burst playstyle, Karain. Like I was saying a second ago, it's first strike mechanic. For the first 5 seconds after you single target ability a mob, you have 25% crit. Huge when you just train mobs and you have that crit buff up for very long, so that's why earlier I had said it's a kind of hard to master class. You're looking at something like that. 1 haste buff, so Dreamweaver has a 12% haste burst tied to it, but it's a ground ability, so you have to stand inside Dreamweaver's haste buff to get it. 1 mastery burst, so Nia's mastery burst. 225 mastery is nothing to laugh at. It is a ton of mastery within Nia. It lasts for 30 seconds, so you have an entire Infernal's worth of mastery inside Infernal. Yeah, and it is just overall a lot of damage. Its main ability is Soul Shape. So when you cast Soul Shape, it's an instant 15-yard teleport. You can use Soul Shape and then an Invis Pot without hitting Flicker again to travel a lot farther, and that's something I don't see a lot of Night Fae users do. That is something that is specific to Night Fae Covenants. For the Soulbinds, we are looking at Necrolord first. Plague Deviser Marilith is the PvP Soulbind due to Ooze, this frictionless coating, and ultimate form. What are the two of those? So, we come back over to our World of Warcraft client. The Ooze frictionless coating is when you're reduced below 50% health, you get an ooze that covers you for 15% health over 10 seconds. So every 30 seconds, this procs for 10 seconds. Or when the shield gets killed off. But that's why this is a PvP Soulbind. You have 15% health shield when you drop below 50%. And his ultimate form, channeling, makes you immune to crowd control, and you regenerate health. So you regenerate a total of about 6% health over 8 seconds or so. And no, it's 8% health over 6 seconds, sorry. Rereading the tooltip here. And you, for that entire 6-second duration, have crowd control immunity. This is why he is a PvP Soulbind. Eminie's playstyle. We're looking at the burst playstyle due to lead by example. What is lead by example? Well, lead by example is when you cast Decimating Bolt, you gain 5% intellect baseline, up to 13% intellect with people around you. And everybody you cast around you that gets that buff gains 2% additional stat. So it's not only a buff bind for you, it's a buff bind for other players, which is why Eminie is overlooked most of the time, because this is kind of a niche example. You cast it during your burst time. Double potency on the tree, so what I'm going to cover later. You have 2 potency conduits that you can utilize. Last but not least, you have Bonesmith Harmier, up to a 3% stat boost at all times, which I'll cover here in a second. You have a 10% 10-second armor cheat death for wipe recovery or to finish off a kill, and a massive 18% crit proc. Also a great playstyle. So what is this? This is the Bonesmith. Forgeborn is your cheat death mechanic and the intellect buff. So as long as you have 3 enchants on your gear or more, you gain a 3% int boost as destruction. So instead of the 13% int during burst, it's 3% always. And his crit buff, so every 60 seconds you can stack 10 crits, which is why crit can be looked at for multi-target scenarios. And it's an 18% crit proc. So when I gain this buff, I go from 18% crit to 36% crit. That is not reduced by its percent. For Night Fae, I'm not going to be able to show Night Fae Soulbinds, but I did grab a lot of their information. Nia's Mastery on Soul Rock cast, so the 225 stat rating Mastery is casted whenever you cast Soul Rot. Nia gains health on teleport, so it could be looked at as a PvP Soulbind. RNG heavy proc that's ground based, so Nia's Tools Burrs is about 3% of your damage proc that the tank has to stand still with to proc this damaging dot. For Dreamweaver, you're looking at the haste proc that is ground based, so it's a ground reticle on the floor that's, say, about 5 yards wide or so. When you stand in it, you gain 12% haste for the duration of Soul Rot, so for about 8 seconds. I believe it's 12 seconds total, actually. Dreamweaver has the double potency as well. Wild Seed cheat death mechanic. Unlike the Necrolord, this is a actual cheat death mechanic, and it does not count toward the Mythic Plus timer. So if you die for whatever reason, the healer can heal you up and you get out of the seed pod. For Karain, you have the 25% per target proc for 5 seconds. The reason per target is so enunciated there is because you can literally chain the 5 seconds into each other. It does not stack. So if you hit a mob for 5 seconds and say it drops to 3 seconds, you hit a different mob, it'll only go up to 5 seconds. It won't go up to 8. So be careful with that. Wild Hunt Tactics over 75% and below 35% health for another 10% damage boost. So you're passively gaining a execute with Karain. No weapon durability loss if you take that side. That's very beneficial. So every time you wipe, you're not spending gold on your weapon. Now we're on to the conduit section. So this is going to cover every endurance conduit. The first one is Accrued Vitality. So I'm going to actually just show all 3 of these here and then show it in the game. So we have Accrued Vitality. Drain life heals for X% of the amount drained over 7.5 seconds. That X% is obviously the white text there. That's based on the conduit. You have Diabolic Bloodstone. So anyone that consumes your health stone, you gain X% leech for 6 seconds. So if everybody's using health stones at separate times, you have a constant 16% health leech gain. Very beneficial. However, if you have everybody using it all at once, you really only see play for about 10 seconds or so. Resolute Barrier. So attacks received that take a minimum of 5% health off of you. Decrease Unending Resolve by 10 seconds. Unending Resolve is the 40% DR. So cannot occur more than once every 24 seconds. Obviously, the 24 is the conduit. So from worst to best, or best to worst, you're going to see Diabolic Bloodstone, Resolute Barrier, and then Accrued Vitality. The only reason you need the Drain Life is if your healers are kind of suffering, and even then, you want to cast other spells instead of this. For Finesse, we're going to do the same thing, except I'm going to go ahead and leave it to this side of the screen because it's a little better seeable. So Shade of Terror. Fear withstands X% more damage before breaking. The X% is obviously the conduit. Very useful in PvP. So you can Chaos Bolt, Fear, Chaos Bolt, and it won't break anything. Demonic Momentum. Demonic Circle Teleport. Increases movement speed by X% for 5 seconds. Basically, after you cast Demonic Circle Teleport, you have 5 seconds for faster movement speed. Fell Celerity. The cooldown of Fell Domination is reduced by X%. So, what is Fell Domination anyway? Fell Domination is the next cast of a pet is reduced by 5.5 seconds. So half second cast time total, and doesn't cost a soul shard. So if I do this and say I cast tank pet, it's going to do that, right? It'll give me my tank pet, but if I go back to my imp, it's going to take 4 seconds to 6 seconds to cast this thing, and it'll pop out and use a shard. And last but not least, Kilrog's Cunning. Eye of Kilrog no longer is stealth and can place Demonic Circle within line of sight. Movement speed of Eye of Kilrog is also increased. So this is useful if you need to, say, jump up somewhere. Eye of Kilrog can go across cliffs and stuff, but I don't really see useful play in this outside of that. Fell Celerity is going to be the #1 finesse conduit that you see next to Demonic Momentum, just because they are both heavy utilities. Last but not least, we have Potency Conduits. Your Covenant ability, so regardless of what Covenant you go, you're going to get a Covenant ability. In Necrolord's case, it's damage increase. In Night Fae's case, it's a damage and an AoE range of Soul Rot increase. So both of those are considerably useful. Obviously, if you don't have the other ones listed below, this one's a nice go-to. Ashen Remains, the #1 Potency Conduit. Immolated targets increase Chaos Bolt and Incinerate damage by an X amount. So that's the reason this is #1. Immolate is always on a target, so you basically have a Chaos Bolt and Incinerate amp all the time. Combusting Engine. This one is horrible because of playstyle changes, but Conflag increases Immolate damage by X% until it expires or is refreshed. The reason why is because instead of using your backdraft charges, you're going to more save Conflags. So that's why the playstyle's changed here. You're basically going to Immolate Conflag because it is stackable. And that's why, and you have to basically let that Immolate fall off before you do that again. And you can do that pretty much every other Immolate, so it's very tricky to maneuver with, and that's why nobody really takes this talent. Infernal Brand is next to Ashen Remains in terms of damage. Every melee the Infernal does increases its damage up to 15 stacks. Each Infernal has a different stack. Now the reason why that's kind of quoted is because if you choose Reign of Chaos, each Infernal buffs up to about 7 stacks and then it disappears. But the main Infernal goes to 15. So that's why the Infernal's melee and its aura is so much damage, and with this talent it just amplifies all of that by tenfold. It's kind of funny to watch. This talent was actually, or Conduit was actually butchered in beta, and it's still useful on AoE. That's how good that talent, Conduit, is. Last but not least, you have Duplicious Havoc. Havoc transfers X% more damage. Very useful on Destro's 2-target niche, which is what Destro really excels at. And so if you really had to go in an AoE scenario, your #1's going to be Ashen Remains, and then it's going to be either Infernal Brand or Duplicious Havoc. The others don't see play. And then we have legendary choices. In no particular order, we have Cinders, which can be placed on legs and back. Its current in 905 is best on legs because that is the most stats. And the stat you want to go after is Haste Mastery. The reason that is current, all of these are current 905, is because 9.1 is bringing domination sockets with domination pieces. The domination pieces are going to be as follows. You are looking at, for Clothies here, we are looking at chest, helm, shoulders, bracers, and belt. So if you create a legendary right now and you want to be kind of certain for Cinders, craft it on the legs, not on the back, because that has the most stats. For Wilfrids is really the next thing for Destro. Honestly, it can be crafted on wrists or finger. Right now in 905, you're looking at wrists, but like I just said, the domination slots has wrists or bracers. So you're going to want to, if you create Wilfrids now instead of later, you're going to want to craft it on your finger because the domination socket is going to go on wrists. Also a Haste Mastery boost. Synergy. So Synergy is more played with Affliction or Demonology, but it still does see play in Destro if you cannot craft Cinders. It is basically a 10% damage amp. But where can it go? Helm and Shoulders. Right now, the better of the two is Helm, but the domination sockets are Helm and Shoulders as well. So you are gonna they are adding extra slots to where these can be crafted at. So whichever slot this is added to, you're gonna want to craft it at that slot. So that's why if you're gonna craft Synergy, wait till 9.1, craft it in its additional slot. and you'll see that play there. Madness. So Madness is the Chaos Bolt buff. It can be currently crafted on head or hands. Right now, in terms of stats, you're going to want to craft it on the helm for haste mastery. But when we get to 9.1, if Madness becomes our legendary of choice, right now you're going to craft it on the hands because that is not on the domination socket. And oh dear, last but not least, you're going to look at waist or legs. And right now, if you're going to craft oh dear, which is the Havoc legendary buffed, you're going to want to craft it on your legs, but legs go with cinders. You're going to craft cinders before you craft oh dear, because oh dear is worse than cinders. And it is safe to craft on legs because 9.1 does not bring that slot. Now, I wondered when we were going to get here. The single target rotation for a Destruction Warlock, regardless of Covenant, is as follows. Immolate, and this is a stat priority. This is not a rotation piece just yet. Refresh Immolate when it gets below 5.5 seconds. Chaos Bolt to not cap 5 shards. Cataclysm when talented. Covenant ability, whether that be Necrolord, Night Fae, Kyrian, or Venthyr. You're looking at the Covenant ability here in terms of priority. Conflag to not cap your shards. Conflag again to generate shards, and Incinerate as a filler. You're going to be casting more Incinerates than you cast anything else in the list here, but Incinerate is your filler ability. For the multi-target rotation, this is kind of a lengthy one, so bear with me. But just like single target, you want to keep Immolate on the main target and up to 4 or 5 targets extra. Cataclysm on cooldown. Cataclysm is the way you're going to spread Immolates, unless we're holding for adds like on a Nerva. Your Covenant ability will be next for bursting scenarios. Rain of Fire if above 5 targets. Havoc available. The reason you want to use Rain of Fire above 5 targets when Havoc is available is because Rain of Fire becomes more damage past 5 targets. You used Havoc as a Incinerate generator for Rain of Fire. Rain of Fire at 3+ targets if Havoc is on cooldown. So basically 5+ Havoc not on cooldown, 3+ Havoc on cooldown. That's kind of the generic damage ramp for Rain of Fire if targets stand still. If targets do not stand still in either of those scenarios, you're going to look at Chaos Bolt for a priority cleave damage. Then we're going to look at Cataclysm, Havoc on 2 targets for shard generation. Chaos Bolt is a spender, Conflag is a generator, and Incinerate as follows. I know that's a lot to take in. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a couple more seconds here, just so you can visually see it. What does that look like in play? So for single target, like I said, do as that says, not as what I'm about to show you, but for single target, let's do the opener, and then I'll show that. The opener for Necrolord is before pull, 3 seconds, cast Incinerate. On pull, or 1 second before pull, cast Cataclysm, then cast Summon Infernal. Trinket Racial, Decimating Bolt, Conflag, Chaos Bolt, Conflag, Chaos Bolt, normal rotation. So within this is kind of misleading, and I want to point that out very soon. You'll want to cast Conflag earlier on purpose. I normally cast Conflag right after Cataclysm and before Infernal, and I'll show you why here in a minute. It's to get that Conflag on cooldown with the Cinders Legendary. But Summon Infernal into, say, if you have Dark Soul Talented or whatever Trinket you want in there, and then Decimating Bolt for the damage. if you're using Imini. Otherwise, just use it for the Incinerate boost. And then you want to just dump Chaos Bolt until Infernal doesn't exist. And then assume normal rotation. For Night Fae people, you're going to do the same 2 openers with Incinerate and Cataclysm. And then if you're using Karain, you want to Soul Rot before Infernal. If you're using Dreamweaver or Nia, you want to Soul Rot after Infernal with Trinket and Racial. The reason behind that is because Karain has that crit buff. Soul Rot will kind of go with this crit buff, which is why you want to do that. Otherwise, it's the same rotation as Necrolord. So, for the Necrolord people, I'm going to show the opening rotation on how I do it. You're going to go, we're going to do a pull timer here. At 3 seconds,
5, 4,
cast Incinerate,
2,
then cast Immolate, then cast Conflag, then cast Infernal into Trinket abilities, then cast Decimating Bolt, then cast Channel Demon Fire, then cast Conflag, then cast Chaos Bolt. Once again, that is Incinerate into Cataclysm, into Conflagrate, into Infernal plus Trinkets, into Channel Demon Fire, into Chaos Bolt, bam. I know that's a lot to take in. I'm going to do that one more time here to briefly show that. If you'd like to rewind the video, I do have a cast bar sequencer that is seeable. But that's the basic single target rotation for destruction. We're going to talk about a couple other things before I get to the multi-target rotation. The tips and tricks, and then we'll go back to multi-target rotation. So, a few things I want to leave off with the Destruction Warlock are as follows. To get better destruction, you're not going to want to cap soul shards. When I watch people, I see a lot of this. They're capping soul shards thinking, oh, I can have 5 soul shards going into somewhere. It's better off to go ahead and cast that Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire preemptively than to cap the soul shards for more damage. You're bursting. Are you bursting properly? Do you Havoc window properly? That type of deal. A lot of times I see people setting up for a Havoc window and then destroy the Havoc window entirely, or they do the Havoc window properly but they don't set up. That's something you can do to increase your damage. At 15% haste rating, you can comfortably get 3 Chaos Bolts in a Havoc window. At 20% haste rating, you can comfortably get 4. But obviously, that's something you just look at, and if you have it, great. If you don't worry about it. Movement kills your always be casting damage. Destruction is a turret-based spec. If you are not standing still, you are losing uptime on your damage. Stand still, do damage. I cannot stress that enough. Before you're pulling, take 30 seconds. Look over your talents, your Soulbinds, and your gear. I cannot tell you how many times I personally do this to make sure all of my stuff is correct before I go into a boss encounter or a Mythic Plus. And I know you saw it while we were doing the single target scenario, but turn off a damage meter. Or you can do what I did, and I just created a simple weak aura that I will put in the description below, where the second you enter combat, it just covers up your details meter. And granted, you stay in combat, it's literally a distraction. Focus on the boss. So that's why I put that there. I stare more at my details meter than I do the mechanics, and I can comfortably tell you, after I put that there, I increased my damage. Even if with just a little bit, it's still increased damage. So, what are we looking at for the multi-target rotation of Destruction Warlock? And this is 2 target scenarios because I'm not in the Night Fae Covenant Hall and I can't show that. I'm going to show the 2 target cleave scenario. So, once again, you're going to open, and I'm going to move the casting timeline bar up a little bit for everybody here. So we're going to go do another pull 10. At 3 seconds, you're going to cast Incinerate,
3,
and then
2,
we're going to cast
1.
Cataclysm into Conflag, into Infernal, into Trinket, into... I just screwed that up, but basically it's into Channel Demon Fire, and then into Havoc, and then Chaos Bolt spam here, just like this. So what I'll do is wait till this next Havoc window rolls around to show how I do the Havoc window here. You want to make sure emulates on 2 or more targets. Cast your Havoc on your off target. Chaos Bolt on flag, Chaos Bolt, and then you notice I don't have enough shards here, so I'm casting Incinerate to fill. That's pretty much it for the Destruction Warlock, guys. Final thoughts going into 9.1 here. Just for me as a whole, I really like where Destruction is placed at. It's right in the middle of the pack in terms of damage, so you're not going to see a lot of nerfs to the spec currently. You may see some couple of buffs like we are seeing, and I will cover those when 9.1 releases. But until then, I feel like Destruction is in a very thorough spec. It's in a thorough place. If you want to play it comfortably going into 9.1, you're not going to have an issue. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I will get to you when I can, but I am always open to suggestions. Have a great one, and I hope you're enjoying Shadowlands as much as I am.